This accountant on a side job made $2.5 million off extorting.
He's an accountant. He was an accountant.
There's always a trail to find.
He's going to be moved to the U.S.
This is the work of not a single person, but of an organized crime group.
Today, we bring you a story of a notorious Yahoo Boy, a person who wasn't even hiding when found, and who extracted $2.5 million out of hundreds of victims. Welcome to Digital Defenders. My name is Milo Brooks. Today with me, Enzo, the specialist analyst. Welcome to the show, Enzo. With a remarkable track record of over 400 solved cases, Enzo has truly earned his reputation as a superstar analyst. His insights and expertise are unparalleled, making him a top choice for anyone seeking the best in cybersecurity. Let's kick things off. Who exactly is this criminal?
Olamide, as he said, is a notorious Yahoo Boy, which is a gang from Lagos, Nigeria. His full name is Olamide Shanu, approximately 30 years old, Nigerian, and guess what? His occupation was an accountant. His crimes include sextortion and various fraud schemes. The duration of the crimes were 5 to 6 years. A steady job highlights of his dual life because he's not your typical scammer.
He's an accountant. He was an accountant, at least. This means that he actually had another job from sextortion. It's a vast difference from the majority of the criminals that we have because
he kind of broke the mold in that case, especially because he was, as he said, he was hiding in broad daylight.
Let's go straight into the tactics. How did he find his victims and how did he approach them?
The approach was online, posing as young women on platforms such as Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok. He would use various aliases. I can mention some like Chloe Walters, 88, Camilla Smith, 96, names that would entice young men into interacting with them. The victims were mainly young males, which we could count, at least from the ones that came forward, over 200 of them. Now, the tactics employed is that he would initiate chats and solicit explicit content, of course posing as these young women. The source compromising materials from the dark web and adult sites in order to interact with these people because they were believing that they were interacting with these beautiful women when they're actually not. They were interacting, as a matter of fact, with, as he said, a notorious Yahoo Boys, a gang very prominent in Lagos, Nigeria. And it just shows you how these gangs are expanding themselves as organized crime, moving from their neighborhoods and cities into a global business, sextorting people, especially English-speaking countries such as the UK, Australia, and of course the United States. Now, one of the things that they were also doing as an organized crime group was offering scripts and guidelines into performing sextortion, and they were very active, especially on TikTok.
How did the extortion phase go?
They would, of course, impersonate the young woman throughout the chats. They would, of course, start with some very romantic messages like love bombing them. And then all of a sudden, they escalate the messages into something more explicit, of course. And they were following a script that you mentioned before called copy pasta, which is what they would create in order to offer guidelines to other people doing these type of extortions as well. And they were always constantly sharing and requesting content. Now, for instance, they would start give you an example of some of the chats they would interact. They would follow a script, and it was mainly something very simple like, hi, I have your nudes and everything we need to do in your life. And that's when you know that they had you. They had preferences for cryptocurrency, of course. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, this accountant on a side job made $2.5 million off of extorting young men and a few women.
Let's move to the investigation. He was arrested. He's been one of the first indictments of Yahoo Boys in decades, by the way. How did they find him?
Reports from victim alerted the FBI, and digital footprints traced him back to the criminal activities. He was operating this whole time hiding in the open in Lagos, Nigeria.
Something worth mentioning about this is the KYC regulations. These regulations are very new policies. We're talking about 2-3 years of being implemented. Companies like Amazon are implementing it big time because they want to stop this money laundering that happens through these apps. With this KYC regulation for Binance, which is where his account was, that they found the connection to a Chinese server And after that, they got to link all the transactions from America and the UK, which were mostly his victims, to his Binance account.
And the social engineering that took place there determined multiple IP addresses that ended up revealing his location. We already spoke about him hiding in the open in Lagos, Nigeria, because as we discussed, he was an accountant. He kept doing his 9-to-5 job, and his side job was hiring people, and he would hire them even on newspaper ads as if it was some sort of job. The requirement was to speak English and to be down and extorting people.
He had a court case earlier this year, like in the initial hearing in the UK, following his arrest. He is being kept there, but he's going to be moved to the US because he has a couple states that want to interrogate him regarding several sextortion.
Imagine with 200 plus victims, the majority of them being from the United States, there are certainly a lot of accusations. Hence the reason the FBI stepped in, because of all the victims that were coming through because of these cases, and they were able to document and follow the money trail. The problem with a lot of these criminals, especially the Yahoo Boys in this particular case, is that they took for granted that Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general is untraceable. What they forgot about it is that it is not untraceable. There's always a trail to find. And once the social engineering that took place determined the IP addresses that were being used, the money was followed, it determined that it was to him in Nigeria.
Let's move to the victims, because there's a vast portion of victims right there, more than 200. What's the impact? What's the usual impact that you've seen, that you've spoken?
I honestly have to say that the emotional effects are the most common impact and severe impact on the victims. There's a feeling of a deep humiliation, of course, betrayal, but the long-lasting impacts are on mental health and self-esteem, to be honest with you. And of course, trust issues, not only in online engagements, but in real-life engagements. Most of these people wanted to interact with an adult online, consent an adult, and thought that they had found somebody to interact with. And then to find out that they were being extorted for that type of interaction severely impacted their mental health. Throughout the time, our investigations and our interactions with our clients who have suffered for this, one of the sequels that we see in it is that, and the lack of trust, of course, moving forward in interactions, as I said, not only online, but person-to-person interaction.
Now, let's think about the fact that he was using these young males to get the money. Let's take the numbers to Nigeria, okay? $1,000 that you extort from someone as a criminal.
It goes a long way. The U.S. currency goes a long way in third world countries, Nigeria not being the exception. The other day I was speaking to a client that was afraid because they were asking him for 80,000 naira, which is the Nigerian currency. And it sounds like a huge amount, but it turns into about $10 once you do the conversion. For example, somebody with a college degree in a place like Nigeria may make maybe $350 a month with a college degree. So imagine how far this would go for these criminal organizations, because they stole what? How much? $2.5 million? That's a lifetime of living like a king in Nigeria. And that's exactly what they did.
$1,000 in Nigeria are 5 annual salaries for a mid-tier person in Nigeria. It's a lot of money when you transform the $2.5 million. I mean, this guy was living in a mansion.
He was living large, that is for sure. And not only this guy, the people that he had around him, because this was not the work of a single person. This was the Yahoo Boys managing people to sit down on buckets even sometimes and extort people that spoke English in the UK, in Australia, New Zealand, most in the United States. This is the work of not a single person, but of an organized crime group.
To all the viewers at home, and to all the viewers that have been victims and are seeking to further, protect their accounts, what would you, a specialist, recommend?
I would recommend to utilize privacy settings on all social media accounts. You can't be too cautious nowadays. Also, always verify the identities before engaging online in any sort of interaction. Report any suspicious activities immediately. As I said before, you can't be too cautious. And to prevent this from going further, blowing out of proportion, those 3 steps will definitely help. There is no such thing as an interaction with another person that all of a sudden turns into something extremely explicit that you cannot suspect it from being suspicious.
Digital forensics, we're a company, we have a decade of experience doing these things. There's a team assembled of forensic analysts. What would anyone that calls digital forensics get from an analyst like you?
Is the advanced method like IP to address services and social engineering. This is what led the FBI to catch on to our suspect in Nigeria. And of course, collaborating with payment portals such as Bitcoin, MoneyGram, Western Union is also something that we have. And the importance of following the money trails to locate the offenders. Everything we discussed about this Yahoo Boy that is now facing consequences for his actions was all due to these few things I'm just mentioning. And one thing I'd like to point out is a 95% success rate that a Digital Forensic Corporation has in recovering lost content. Most important thing is, even though there are a lot of similarities between cases, we individualize each and every case as to what our clients' needs are in that specific point of time. Our service are not just a general service, they're individualized because we cater to each and every one of our clients to their very specific needs.
We will identify them and locate them. We will delete your content and we will tell them to stop, to later and finally give you a report so you can take to the police if you want to build a case with factual proof. That is going to help you out in a vast way. Thank you very much for coming in here. If you ever need the assistance of a specialist like Enzo right here, 800-849-6515.
Or just go to digitalforensics.com.
Fantastic. 24/7 expert assistance in chat and in phone calls for any type of assistance related to sextortion, online blackmail, romance scams, malware attacks, anything you think about it, we have it for you. My name is Milo Brooks. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Digital Defenders, and I'll see you in the next time.